In this video, I'll show you how I take this gray resin base from Elric's Hobbies and get it painted up and ready for display. This base from Elric's Hobbies is a fantastic sculpt, and it's loaded with detail. It's all one piece. You don't have to glue anything on. You don't have to do anything to it. It comes ready to go. I've used these several times before, and I really like them. I wanted to start off by painting the earth areas, the dirt areas, so I used this mix of leather brown and sky green. I wanted a brownish dirt look that had just maybe the barest hint of green attached to it, and I just go through and paint all of the areas of dirt. I'm not too worried about getting any of the paint on other areas of the model. I just fully paint everything, get it all painted up, and so that it's good to go with that dirt effect all over it. Next, I wanted to do a dry brush of Iraqi sand, and this is just going to make the dirt kind of stand out. It's going to give it some depth, some highlights, and again, I wasn't really concerned about whether I hit any other part of the model or anything else, because I was going to paint all of that later on. And then a final step is adding some Agrax Earth Shade, and I just painted this on heavily. And by getting this done first, I can paint the rest of the model and not have to worry about getting down into these nooks and crannies and other areas that can be kind of difficult to reach if you're trying to miss other detail. And I've learned this because I've painted a few of these bases, and this just ended up being a fairly helpful way of doing it, at least for my purposes. So this is stage one, I guess you'd say. Next, I wanted to start painting the individual elements, and I used this whole red to paint these pipes. I imagine them as some sort of ceramic or something like that. I just thought it would be an interesting color to paint them, so this is a perfect color as a base for all of the pipe work. Then I wanted to add some rust base color to these I-beams around here, and I use this life color paint. It's a great rust set, and I just painted those up, being careful not to get it down into the dirt. I wanted to keep some separation there. Next, I painted the sandbags with this camo olive green, and I just thought it was a good color that reminded me of the sandbags that we used when I was in the Army. It took a couple of coats to get it on there thin and smooth and up to a good opacity, but it's a great color and I use it quite a bit. For the tiles, I wanted to use this green-gray color, and I use this just because it's light and it'll show weathering, and it's kind of a neutral color. It's not quite gray. There's a little bit of green to it, but it's not overpowering. So that it becomes the focal point. It's rather just a background color. Then this beige color I used for the tarp that's on there, and I thinned this down quite heavily, so it took a few coats to get that on there. It sinks down into all the little nooks and crannies, and you do have to paint all the little strands that are sticking off of it. Some of those are over other elements, and that may require repainting as you go along, but it really brings realism to the base. And then I wanted to paint some neutral gray on for this tile part that is flipped over. I wanted to do this because later on I'm going to do some chipping on the tile, and I wanted to use the same color, and so I wanted to kind of tie that together with this to make it look consistent. Now the deck tan I used for the skulls that are on there. This is a 40K base, a Warhammer 40K base, and so there's going to be skulls everywhere. So I based those in the deck tan. I thought that would be a good base color. And with all of that paint on, I have the base colors on, and I'm pretty happy with how it looks. You could just about at this point apply a wash and stop at this point if you wanted to, but I'm not going to. I did a mix of this olive green and the camo color, and for this I just wanted to do some highlighting of the sandbags. You could call this layering, you could call it glazing. The main thing I wanted to do was just make the upper surfaces look a little lighter than the surfaces that are on the sides, just to give it a little bit of highlighting, a little bit of volume, and make it stand out just a little bit, not too much. Then I wanted to go in with some whole red and a mix of flat red and just put that on top of these pipes. And I did that in several applications, lightening it up each time. Again, the idea is just to give it a little bit of volume, a little bit of shape, to make it seem a little more three-dimensional, although it already looks great as it is. The deck tan I used to dry brush onto the tarp there. I thought it was a little too bright, and so I thought by adding this deck tan on there, it would help some of the details stand out, and would also just lighten it up a little bit. The neutral gray was used to do some chipping on the tiles. And what I was imagining is that these tiles were very old and there had been lots of, walking over them and things falling on them and scuffing them up and just providing chips. And this also provided some, I guess you would say, edge highlighting to bring out the various shapes and edges and make them stand out just a little bit. Now I wanted to do some rust, so I used the rest of my Life Color rust set, and I just began stippling on from the darker to the lighter tones the rust colors on these two I-beams that are on here, so that they would look old and as if they had been sitting out for quite a long time. I wanted to use this contrast Griff Charger gray paint just to bring out the lines between the tiles. I thought it worked a little better than something that would be darker, just because it's got just a hint of blue to it, and I thought that looked really good. I tested it in a couple of places, and I thought it looked really good. So it just helps those the separation stand out there. I wanted to do further shading with this Agrax Earth Shade and some Lamy Medium. I mixed it up in about equal parts. I didn't want it to be too overpowering, so I just painted it over that area of the tarp. And then I used full-on Agrax Earth Shade, no thinning, to just bring out the edges of those pipes there. I wanted that separation to show and be a little more prominent than it was, and this helped bring out or deepen the shadows, I guess you'd say. I also added it here in the interior parts of the I-beams just to make them stand out a little bit more. Now I went back to my beige color, and I used this to dry brush on that tarp. And mainly what I'm doing here is trying to bring out the edges and the shapes. I focused a lot of the dry brushing along the folds and things like that, so they would stand out. And you can see it just gives it some extra dimension. I also added some of this to the sandbags. I wasn't real happy with the highlighting I'd done earlier, so I wanted to add just a little bit more to maybe punch it up just a bit. Now this Citadel Apothecary White, I just painted that over those skulls, and it just gave them a little bit of shadow, a little bit of depth. I didn't want to make them too much of a focal point, so this just did it real simply. And then I continued with the Apothecary White and added some Black Templar, and just painted that on this tile here to make those little ridges show more. It changed the color slightly, but it helped give it some definition and some depth. Now it's time to weather it. I start with this European Dust model wash, and I use a sponge to just begin stippling that on there. And I go through and just do this and let it dry a little bit, and then add some more and let it dry, and I just build it up until it gets to the point that I like the way that it looks. And I wanted to add, this is 40K, so I wanted to add some blood to it. So I used the same stippling motion with a sponge, and that just started off kind of a base of where the blood stain would be. And then I followed up with that with some whole red that I thinned just a little bit with water, and did the same technique that just kind of darkened that area down and made it appear, I guess it's realistic. We'll call it realistic. but I think it gets the point across. I switched to some dark yellow model wash, and again, this is just doing some things to make it look like it's dirty. This time I did some splattering with a toothpick and my brush, and I just let that get across on any of the parts, all of the parts, to make them look dirty. And then I wanted to do a few things that appeared like oil stains or other kind of stains. So the Agrax Earthshade was perfect for that. It'll dry flat and just look like some kind of oil stain. I also wanted to make kind of a slime look. So I combined this Pledge floor polish in this cup with a little bit of green game ink from Vallejo, and just made this green, I don't know what you want to call it. It can be toxic waste. It can be nuclear waste. It's just something that's going to go here in that area that's kind of encompassed by the pipe. And at first I started brushing it in because I wanted quite a bit of it in there. But when I got done with this, I actually just poured it in there to fill it up and got that ready to go. Well, I'm ready to call this base done. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. A final step that I didn't show was I just painted around the rim with a mix of black and chocolate brown just to darken that down a bit. But I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. When you start off with such a good resin casting, it's not difficult to end up with a very nice looking result because of all the great textures and things that are on here. So if you've never done a base like this, I hope this has given you some ideas of some simple ways that you can finish it up and have it ready for display or for the tabletop. Now I'll be using the base to display this Armiger Helverin, a Warhammer 40K model. And this is something that I painted up as a member exclusive. If you're supporting me on YouTube or Patreon at the $5 or $10 level, you can see the process of getting this built. But that's what the base is for. And hopefully this will eventually go to a buyer and will be in someone else's home sometime in the future. So if you're interested in this model, be sure and follow me on eBay and check out when I have it available. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. I'm grateful, especially if you're still hanging around at this point. I'm double grateful for that. Hopefully this video has given you some ideas on some simple ways with some fast drying acrylic products to finish a base, whether it's a resin base or not. These products and techniques would work on any base. So I hope this has been useful to you. There are links down below to the various social media that I'm on if you want to connect with me there. There's, of course, a subscribe link, and I would be grateful if you would click on that. There's also ways to support this channel if you would like to support the work that I do. There's a join link, so you can join here on YouTube and see the benefits that are there. And then down below, there's a link to Patreon, and there's also benefits that go along with that. And of course, if you're already a supporter on either one of those platforms, thank you so very much for your support. My family and I are grateful for it. You're the ones who make this possible for me to be able to purchase things like this resin base and the products that I use and keep the videos coming out. So thank you very much. And with all that being said, I'll leave you with one final thought, as I always like to do. In this hobby, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Happy day to you, friends. Bye-bye.